Backseas Musical Podcast.
Resistance is useless!
Whenever you get two radio people together, especially ones who have never met, doesn't take very long for things to circle around into a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon-style conversation. This is a very small industry in a lot of ways, and if I don't know one guy, it's probably pretty likely that I know somebody that guy's worked with. Maybe we share somebody in common who fired one of us. Maybe it's someone we competed against. Perhaps we've been mismanaged by the same management. And if it's not the people we know, maybe it's we've worked for the same company or worked in the same city doing the exact same job as the other guy, but doing it somewhere else. Either way, you're never more than just a couple of steps away from knowing every single person in radio. He's just released his book, Sonic Warrior, My Life as a Rock and Roll Reprobate. Sit back and prepare yourself for a hell of a ride with my guest, Lou Brutus, on Backseas Musical Podcast. I got to tell you, I've been social distancing myself with your book for the last couple of days, and I love it.
You got an advance of it. Yeah. Oh, great. Oh, I'm so glad you like it.
I did, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why I like it. If you told these stories to someone in any other industry, they'd say there's no way that any of these stories happened. But if you talk to someone who's in radio, particularly rock radio, there's no way these stories didn't happen. And I think that's totally badass on your part.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is, you know, there were other people at all. Like, nothing is just, like, pulled out of my behind. You know, for the most part, there's somebody there for everything. And as funny as it may be, I was out in Las Vegas a few weeks ago. I did my first public reading of the book at the Happens convention. And Cheryl Valentine was there, who's a record person, you know,
right,
famous in her own right in the record world for, 20 plus years. She started to thumb through, it's the next to last chapter, the crazy party in Pantera's dressing room. And she was like, oh, I was there. I remember. Oh, yeah. And I said, you remember somebody getting slapped on the ass? It was Sully Erna, because I didn't put that part in the book.
Right.
And I thought it was a mutual friend of Cheryl and mine named Kristen. And she said, oh, no, it wasn't. No, it was so-and-so. I said, yes. She was wearing black leather pants, and Cheryl finished it up. She goes, yeah, she had a bright orange top on. I said, absolutely.
There you go. It all pieces together.
And the other thing from Cheryl was, did you get to the chapter yet? The time I got so high I drooled in my own lap. I got so high with Snoop Dogg.
Yes, I did.
I drooled in my own lap. I mentioned my old producer for the syndicated show, Roxy, getting so high she couldn't add up time codes. She kept telling me that there were 100 seconds in a minute. And Cheryl said, oh, my God, I can't believe you put that in the book. I never told you. She called me from her car that night. She went out and got in her car and realized she was too fucking high to drive, and she was like crying. And she was like, I'm too high. What am I going to do? Oh, how am I going to get home? Fucking true story. I wish I'd known it. I'd have put it in the book.
Yeah, I think anybody who is, and like I said, you and I have been in radio for about the same time. I got into radio about a year before Guns N' Roses released their first album. I was fired from that first station about 2 months after Nirvana released Nevermind. So that 5-year window of my first station was kind of where most of my most indelible radio, rock radio stories happened. After I got fired from there, I wound up, bouncing around with one company, Saga Communications, and I've been here in Springfield for the last 25 years. But those first 5 years were crazy times, and I think the 80s and early 90s is something that may be lost forever. Let's talk about why you wrote the book. What was it that said, you know what, I got to put these things down, and it's got to be in a book?
I think mostly it was other people who had heard me tell these stories. Again, you're a fellow rock radio rat, so you are very familiar with the time-honored tradition of trading rock and roll war stories. And often it's when you're covering festivals together or after a concert and everybody is back at the hotel bar with the band. And, everybody is, I did this with this band and I traveled here for this concert. Anyway, it sort of came out of that tradition of telling stories. The thing is, I'm doing this for so long, and I've been fortunate enough to do it at such a level that I've got really crazy stories, and I've traveled a lot and have gotten, the inside track with just a lot of artists. So I've got pretty good stories, and a number of friends have been on me to do the book, and I'm an avid reader, and I do a lot of other writing, but I'd never done a book before. And I thought, well, I'm going to do it. One of the people who was sort of a catalyst for it was the guy who wrote the foreword for me, which is Corey Taylor from Slipknot and Stone Sour, and he's a phenomenal author in his own right.
Right.
He's been busting my balls for years to write a book, and I told him, well, if I write a book, you're going to write the foreword. He goes, I'll write the foreword, you write the book, And it was a little over a year ago, I guess closer to a year and a half, he came to me and said, hey, I got the foreword. It's ready to go. It's in my hand. I'm ready to blast out the foreword. Where's the book? And I'm like, well, I want to write some other stuff for it. There's so many more stories, and and he interrupts me like I'm the dumbest guy on the planet. And he said, you stupid asshole, just write another fucking book after this one. Just do a second book. Get the first one out.
That's it.
Oh, I'd never thought of it before. I was, kind of puttering along. It was right about that time I got the book deal, and I had to sort of buckle down and finish it at that point, so I did.
But you probably have more than enough for a second, maybe even a third book, if I'm getting you straight, because some of the stories that are in here are amazing. I mean, they are hard to believe for some people, but not hard to believe in other ways. Like, for example, I think one of my favorite stories in the book was bowling with Gene Simmons. I think that's absolutely hilarious. It's not just that you're with Gene Simmons, but that Gene Simmons is schooling you on bowling.
Well, that's the thing, and it's just one of the cool things in life that, sometimes you find unlikely things in unlikely places. The exact title of that chapter is The Time Gene Simmons of KISS Proved to be the Hottest Bowler in the Land. And something I should mention before I go into the story is the book is a memoir, and there's a couple of dozen chapters, and each chapter is a standalone story. And it's not even in chronological. It just jumps around as if we were standing at the bar talking, telling stories. And so each chapter is sort of self-contained. And I was like an itty-bitty baby DJ at that point, and I was working in Providence, Rhode Island.
Yep.
And KISS was coming to town, and I already kind of knew the guys pretty well. They knew I was a big fan and played them a lot, was a big supporter. And Gene Simmons called the hotline one day. Hello, this is Gene Simmons of KISS. And, hey, Gene, it's Lou. He goes, Lou, I don't know if you're aware, but KISS is going to be playing the Providence Civic Center next week. And I'm like, yeah, Gene, it's kind of a big deal. We're promoting it. And he said, what you might not know is we have a day off before the gig, and I will be in town, and I wanted to see if you wanted to hang out and do some guy stuff. And like the 13-year-old KISS fanatic in my head,
right,
ready to pee its pants, And so anyway, long story short, we do some other stuff. It doesn't work out. So we go bowling. And Gene starts bowling. Gene Simmons is the best friggin' bowler on the planet. Everything he throws is a strike. He then starts doing trick shots, blindfolded, backwards, between his legs. He crisscrossed two balls multiple times. Everything is a strike. And finally, we're in between frames, and I look at him and I go, Gene, how the hell did you get so good at bowling? And he looked at me and said, Lou, Paul and I have been on the road these many decades. We neither drink nor take drugs. There's nothing else to fucking do out here. And it's just, he said, and I don't mean to brag, but I'm also the best darts player you've ever met in your life. And I've seen every major motion picture that's come out since 1974. But then you come into the realization that, when you're a band on the road, particularly a band like KISS, who's been doing it for decade after decade, you think, oh, man, you're on the road, you're in New York City, and there's tons to do, or you're in Las Vegas, and there's tons to do, you're in L.A., there's tons to do. Most of the time you're on the road, you're in Moline or Cedar Rapids or, places that have great rock fans, but maybe not a lot to do outside of the hotel. So what do you end up doing? You end up becoming the best bowler on the planet. I sort of equate it with Bill Murray getting really good at tossing cards in Groundhog Day.
Right.
It's like, is this what you do with eternity?
It's what you do with every single day. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. You said in the book that you were a fan from 14 years old with the Kiss Army. I was too. My parents took me to my first Kiss show in 1978 at the Providence Civic Center, and my parents, particularly my mom, liked the show more than I did. My mom just thought, "Oh, the man with the blood is such a marvelous performer." And how do you not? I'm a sixth grade kid. I'm like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened in my life. Is my parents splurged for the $15 ticket to see this band that, like you, I was totally obsessed with at that age, and they freaking delivered like the greatest show ever.
Yeah, I remember on the reunion tour that began in '96 and went on for a couple of years, and I went to dozens of those shows. I brought my girl to one of them, and she was amazed. Halfway through the opening number, she's just staring at Paul Stanley, and he's
right.
shimmying around and moonwalking and all this stuff. She just looks at me, says, "He walks better in heels than I do." I said, "He walks better in heels than anybody.
Everybody does.
He's Paul Stanley. He's the star child. What do you want from this? This is what he does."
My parents got back at me for the Kiss show, and they took me. My next concert was Neil Diamond, and ironically, I liked it more than they did.
One of the few performers I've never seen, and I planned to see him on his last tour, and he cut it short because he announced he had Alzheimer's, and he just couldn't hack it anymore, and immediately quit a tour.
The dude was.
People forget.
He's a total showman, and it's like one great song after another with that guy.
Yeah, and people forget that Neil Diamond came out of the same club and theater scene that bands like the Grateful Dead did.
Yeah.
That's why I try and tell everybody, and it's going to become more acute now with the the health situation and how crowds are dealt with, moving forward. But I've always told anyone who would listen, when it comes to performers like a Neil Diamond or the Rolling Stones or Elton John or Paul McCartney or Ozzy Osbourne, these people have had 50 to 60-year careers for a reason. And it's because they're really friggin' good. They're amongst the best entertainers ever in the history of humankind. And you're a fool not to go see them. And I know it's easy to go, "Oh, Paul McCartney's in the 70s. That's my parents' music. That's my grandparents' music." So what? Why would you not want to go see a guy with arguably the greatest songs ever written perform live while you can? I've just never understood people who turned up their noses at any concert tickets. I mean, I've taken every opportunity I can to see anybody possible.
And at the end of your book, you list, I think it's like a list of almost 3,000 shows that you've seen, and the average person would look at that and say, well, if I'm paying like today's ticket prices, that'd be about $500,000 worth of tickets. But back then, in radio, I don't know how it was for you. When I was working in Milwaukee, we would have tickets available at the end of business that were never claimed. And you just went to shows because those tickets were going to go to waste. I mean, I saw shows that I didn't want to see. Some of them were great. Some of them were awful. But yeah, you're right. It's hard to pass up any live performance when you've got the chance to see it.
Yeah, and what you're referring to, there's an appendix at the end of the book, and it's just called The List. And it is a fairly complete, although every now and then I find a ticket stub or a pass from a band that I didn't put on there. And it lists every live act that I've seen, all the music acts, and I included some of the bigger non-music acts, like Penn and Teller, George Carlin,
right? People
who do or did concert-like shows. After 3,000 plus music events, and that's anything from a tiny club show all the way up to mega festivals. It gets to be a very, very long list. But again, I'm doing this professionally for Well, I started my internship in 1981.
Yeah.
So that's when I really started to get access to free stuff. So I get in free for most everything. And, certainly there are bands that invite me to travel with them. And so that makes it a lot easier to take in extra shows. If I hop on a bus with Slipknot, and see 6 shows in a week, that's 6 shows. It's only one band.
But it's 6 shows.
On the list, but it's 6 shows.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's how it adds up if you're able to spend your entire life going to concerts every week.
Yeah, absolutely. But
it's the end result, I suppose.
But that business has changed so much. And like today, the idea of getting free tickets doesn't come like it used to, or whatever it may be. But it's starting to turn around. But at this point now, it's hard to see any band that you want to see for less than $3. And the average, I think the problem with that is actually it's priced out most of the people that would normally go to those shows. And so you literally have to pick and choose which ones you want to see and which ones you just can't afford. And I think it's a real problem for a lot of people.
Yeah, certainly. The pricing has gone insane and the convenience charges have gone insane. And while they have bigger problems to deal with at the moment, eventually Congress is going to have to step in and do something about this. Now, I have people who kind of snicker at me when I say that, but let's look at it. Billions of dollars are spent each year in the United States on live entertainment, in particular concerts. There's a lot of money at stake there. Billions more flow through our monetary system based on the merchandise, the people who work the venues. That's why the health situation in the country is so tough on the entertainment industry. Now, I know it's super easy to go, oh, the Rolling Stones had to push their tour back. Mick Jagger's got $1 bazillion. Who cares? Well, I'm not worried about Mick Jagger. But you know who I am worried about? I'm worried about the concessionaires. I'm worried about the people who sell the beer and sell the T-shirts and sell the hot dogs and work security and work the loading dock and the roadies and the crew. That is a ginormous piece of the economy. And again, I'm not saying they're the only people who are going through a rough time, and it could get rougher, but you can't immediately just write it off and go, well, it's just concerts. It's not important. It's actually very, very important. And back to the original point, Congress has got to step in and investigate and see what's going on with this legal ticket scalping. How is it that a show sells out, but then everything's on an electronic ticket selling service literally the same second?
You bring up a good point. We had MGM built a casino here about almost 2 years ago, and they brought some shows in. They had Aerosmith come for I think it was like 4 nights, 5 nights, something like that. And the initial,
I saw them in DC right after they did that run.
And so they had a tier of tickets that were going to go on sale the first day. People got to the venue, they're online, and those tickets were gone within half a second. In fact, those tickets were not available to anybody, and people felt like almost deceived because it was like, well, I want to go to the show, but I may have to wait around or go to a third party to find it. I think you're right. At some point, there needs to be some sort of intervention in this business because it really has gotten wildly out of control.
Yeah, I'm hoping that. And again, I understand that there are far more important problems for everybody to deal with at this particular moment. But things absolutely will get back to normal, and it'll just be part of the long list of things that need to be fixed. So
yeah, well,
but as for me, I'm able to get in, usually for free. And to anybody who says, "Well, that's not fair," I'll ask them what they do, and I'll be like, "Well, what perks does your business have?" Well, I'm a plumber, so I get my plumbing supplies, or I can, people can fix my pipes for free, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, so." Screw you then. Like what do you complaining about? Everybody gets perks in their world. Mine just happen to be concert perks, which are a lot of fun.
Right.
So everybody deserves their perks, though.
I agree. I totally agree. One of the things that I've noticed, and when you read the book and the relationships that you've established with a lot of different performers and rock stars, and one of the things that I noticed is is that the older they are, the more seasoned they are, the more desperate they are to want to be like real people again. Like when somebody comes out, they got a record out, especially back, in the 80s and the hair metal days. I just found that the younger guys who were trying to promote like their first record, they just wanted that rock star lifestyle. They weren't thinking in terms of a long-term career, or weren't thinking too far ahead in the future. But the older guys would come in and they're like, I'm kind of done with that rock star bullshit. It's kind of nice to actually have conversations. My first morning show partner was 20 years older than I was, and we would have guys come in, and it was like they're talking to old friends. And I just thought, at the time, I'm 23 years old doing mornings with a guy who's 20 years older than me, and I'm like, man, that's just like the coolest thing ever. But I know you kind of hit on that a little bit in the book, that sometimes these people are just dying for an adult conversation with people.
Yeah, it's like anything else. I mean, it's great to have fans, I imagine, but if everybody's just screaming and yelling at you and you can't have a regular moment with them, that's kind of a drag.
Yeah.
I think I touch on it in the book that, I feel bad for the rock stars or anybody I see, actors or, famous type folks, when people meet them and they just flip out. It's like a drag. You feel embarrassed for them, and it's just, I mean, there's a lot of perks with the rock star job, but it's not the easiest thing in the world either. So, but yeah, there's plenty of that in the book, and one chapter kind of keys in on a guy whom I don't really know all that well. I'm not claiming to be a bosom pal of him or anything, but he really is one of the more down to earth people that I've seen operate professionally, and that is Dave Grohl. Who, totally chill guy. He, what you see is what you get, as best as I can tell with Dave Grohl. And I'm sure, like any other human being, he has his moments. But every time I've dealt with him on a professional level, he's just been the most level-headed, nice guy.
Yeah.
And of course, he's really good at that rock and roll thing too.
He's also the kind of guy, and I think it is a testament to the kind of person he is, that he's the kind of guy that I think everybody wants to see succeed. You know what I mean? He's been through so much in his career. It's like you don't want to see anything bad happen to that guy, because he's so likable and so talented, and he really has faced some unbelievable adversity in his career to get there. Yeah, but it's just like anybody else. If somebody seems like a decent person, you're thinking, well, I hope they do good. I hope everything works out for them. Dave just happens to be that type of person, and he's in the rock and roll world. So, yeah.
I've been planning on seeing him on 4th of July in Washington, D.C. Lord knows if that show is going to end up happening or not, but keeping my fingers crossed.
One of the things I wanted to hit on, because I've been in preparing for this, I looked at all the things that you've done and the places you've been, in Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago. I know that one of the things that you had done was program a number of stations on satellite radio, and the one that always caught me was Fungus 53, which I thought was such a great station. It was a station that played punk and music of that genre, which I think for many people is the other side of classic rock. I've been doing a show here for the last 3 years that plays like a lot of old new wave and vintage alternative and stuff like that. But it was, to me, that was like a format that probably in your case was a little bit even ahead of its time. It's music that's very valid for people, but just hasn't really gotten the kind of respect that I think it really does deserve.
Growing up where I did in central New Jersey, I was right in between New York and Philadelphia. It was about an hour or two each one. It was a community, it was Englishtown, New Jersey. It was more geared towards New York. That's where most everybody commuted to. But it was an equal distance to Philadelphia. The great byproduct of that for me was there were concerts every night of the week. Literally, there were great shows to go to, because between New York and Philadelphia and the Jersey concert places, the old Capitol Theater in Passaic, Convention Hall in Asbury Park, the Paramount in Asbury Park, there were a number of really great places that were very close. So I was able to go see anybody, and because myself and my circle of friends were all total music nerds, we would go see pretty much anybody who was good. In a given week, we might see Frank Zappa at the Palladium in New York, the Kinks at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, the Dead Kennedys at City Gardens in Trenton. We might go to the Capitol Theater to see the Ramones play. Along with the sort of more bread and butter bands that the rest of our friends liked, the punk bands, they were right in our wheelhouse as well. So I just thought it was all good music. I never understood people who said, I understand them if that's what they like, but I just don't get it when people say, oh, I only like this genre of music or these kind of bands. I'm like,
right,
man, you're really kind of limiting yourself. I just try and listen to the best of everything, and kind of keep my horizons as broad as possible. And again, I think it's pretty well reflected in the list at the end of the book of all the bands I've seen. And by the way, if you go to my website, which is loubrutus.com, there is an electronic version of the list in one of the sections of the site. And then there's tons of other things on there, too. There's stuff about the book. I do a ton of photography.
Right.
And there's lots of examples, like probably 500 to 1,000 pictures I've shot, all rock bands and Major League Baseball and astrophotography and all this stuff. But if you don't believe me about the list, then go check it out yourself. And keep in mind I've kept every ticket stub and poster and backstage pass and wristband and laminate and everything else.
It's very, very diverse, really, really broad. It's very, very cool. And in fact, I think I'm jealous of a lot of it because a lot of those bands I never got a chance to see. So that was a very, very cool compilation of bands. A couple of quick questions before I'll let you go. Some real quick hits. What would you say would be the best show you ever saw?
I can never think of an answer for that because I've seen so many cool things. I'll toss out a few really quick things at you. The Freddie Mercury tribute show at Wembley Stadium in London, which, if I remember correctly, was 1992.
Mm-hmm.
Freddie had passed away the previous year. So they wanted to do something to honor his memory and raise money for the Freddie Mercury AIDS charity. So a number of bands came out and performed short sets, and that included Metallica, Def Leppard, and others. The second half of the show was even better. It was the surviving members of Queen, and they started bringing out people to sing in place of Freddie.
That's cool.
And James Hetfield did Stone Cold
Crazy. Yep.
And, David Bowie, I think with Annie Lennox, did Under Pressure. Elton John did The Show Must Go On. He was also joined in a duet by Axl Rose for Bohemian Rhapsody. I forget. You can look up the show, but that was one of the most amazing things I've seen. Other phenomenal shows. The Grateful Dead played my little hometown of Englishtown, New Jersey. This was a town with 2 traffic lights in it, and 150,000 Deadheads showed up. Literally shut down the state of New Jersey. New Jersey Turnpike shut down.
Wow.
Garden State Parkway shut down. God, so many other shows. I don't even know. Slipknot, the closing night of the first tour, the Electric Factory. It was November 1st of that year. The night before it was really good, too. They played a Halloween show at the Hammerstein in New York City. Metallica in the Inuit village of Tuktoyaktuk on the north coast of Canada.
Yep.
That was amazing. Also, another Metallica show. They played the basement. They played Grimey's Basement, a record store, the basement of a record store in Nashville. And I think there were 45 of us there. That was, that was super small. I could sit. We could talk for 2 hours, and I could just start rattling off concerts.
Yeah.
If we came back and did it again for 2 more hours, I'd probably rattle off 2 hours of different shows.
I would say the best show that I ever saw. This goes back to my days in Milwaukee. It was a Summerfest show. Summerfest is a big 10-day music festival out on Lake Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
It's a huge, huge event, and we used to we used to run one of the stages over there at the station I was working for, and the one show I saw, it was the band Fishbone opening up for the Violent Femmes. Fishbone just melted the place. I've never seen a crowd so whipped up in a frenzy. And then all of a sudden the Violent Femmes come along. I lasted 5 minutes with the Violent Femmes because I was so exhausted by Fishbone. It was unbelievable. Just a band that was just so great live. What about the worst show you ever saw?
Boy, I'll tell you a band that I still love, but they were not that they were bad musically, but they were not very exciting performers. The Cars.
The Cars, yeah.
And yeah, the Cars, who dozens of great singles, tons of great albums, phenomenal songwriters, brilliant in the studio, like watching paint dry on stage.
Yeah.
It's just, but musically they sounded great, but they were not showmen. They were not. They weren't very exciting to watch. Again, musically sounded great. Showmanship,
not so much.
Just a little lackluster. Yeah, they were probably a great club band in that respect. But I saw them in arenas. I saw them twice at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, and the excitement just didn't carry over, at least for me. But there you go.
I think
no offense to Rick Ocasek or Ben Orr or the rest of the guys.
I think the worst show I saw, I was kicked out of a Wang Chung concert. I was thrown out by security for nothing I had done. There were 3 guys that sat right in front of us during a Wang Chung show. Again, free tickets at the end of the day at the radio station. The 3 guys in front of us started throwing ice from the balcony onto the band. And the band, pointed up to the balcony. Security comes up, and these 3 guys point at me and my buddies, and we get kicked out. Turns out the 3 guys in front of us were the Beastie Boys. So the Beastie Boys saved me from having to endure an entire Wang Chung concert. So I never got a chance to thank them.
Wow.
That's a true story. An absolute true story.
That's amazing.
and
Damn.
And we were seeing the Beastie Boys the following night, and Fishbone opened up for them. So it was like one of those.
Oh, what a great bill.
It was a hell of a bill.
And Beastie Boys were a great live band, too. I remember seeing them on that first big tour with Run DMC.
Yep.
That was where the cops were coming out and the National Guard every night. I remember seeing them again on Lollapalooza when Ill Communication came out. I saw them a bunch of times through the years. They were always fun.
Yeah. The name of the book is Lou Brutus, Sonic Warrior, My Life as a Rock and Roll Reprobate. Lou, it's great to talk to you, and I appreciate you calling in.
Really, I appreciate the support on the book and the kind words about it, and I just want to let everybody know you can order the book from Rare Bird Books, my publisher. You can also get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or anywhere else that you buy books. And by the way, if you do have a local bookstore, I would encourage you to try and get it or order it through the local bookstore so the bookstores don't go away the way the record stores did.
Right.
But anyway, if it's easier for you, you can just hop on Amazon and look for it. Or just go to my website, loubrutus.com. Also, I'm always, particularly these days, because we're all sort of holed up together.
Oh, yeah.
You can follow me at Lou Brutus on Twitter, at Lou Brutus on Instagram, Lou Brutus Rocks on Facebook, and we'll hang out some more. And as soon as the coast is clear, I will be traveling the country on a book tour. So looking forward to seeing folks.
That would be awesome. Lou, appreciate the time. Thank you so much, and best of luck with the book.
Thanks so much. I'll see you soon.
Well, there you go. Again, check out Lou's new book, Sonic Warrior. It's really, really good when you get a chance. Also, check out the Fun Bag Facebook page and updates on Instagram. And thanks for listening. Be well, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you soon.